The night of my graduation party, I thought my family had gathered to celebrate my biggest achievement. Instead, they handed me a folder asking me to sign away my $12 million inheritance. I'm Emma. And that was the moment I realized love sometimes comes with a hidden price tag. What would you do if the people you trusted most tried to steal everything you had worked for? Stick around. I'd love to hear what you think after you hear my story. I had always imagined my graduation day would end with tears of joy and the feeling that anything was possible. I never thought betrayal would be waiting for me, hidden behind the smell of barbecued brisket and the clink of celebratory glasses. The sun was high and warm that afternoon, casting a golden light over the University of Texas at Austin's wide, familiar lawns. My cap bobbed a little as I walked across the stage, my name ringing out over the speakers. I could hear my family above the general applause. Mom's high-pitched cheer, Dad's enthusiastic clapping, even Logan whistling like it was a football game. I smiled as I accepted my diploma, heart pounding with the kind of pride that fills your chest so tight it feels like you might float away. It was supposed to be one of the best days of my life, and part of me clung tightly to that idea, even when little warnings whispered in the back of my mind. Grandma Maggie's voice came to me at odd moments like this. "Never trust a smile that's too eager when money's involved," she had said once, a lesson wrapped in her usual soft laugh. Back then, I thought she was just being cynical. Today, I wasn't so sure. Later that evening, back home in Austin, the backyard had been transformed into a party straight out of a summer postcard. Fairy lights hung between the oak trees, casting a warm glow over tables piled high with beef brisket, smoked ribs, mac and cheese, and peach cobbler so sweet it perfumed the whole yard. Dad manned the grill like a general in battle, while Mom fluttered around, refilling sweet tea glasses and arranging vases of daisies. Guests wandered in carrying balloons, cards, and bouquets, their voices rising and falling in a steady hum. I moved through the crowd, hugging old neighbors and distant cousins I hadn't seen since I was knee-high, all of them grinning like they shared some secret joke. "Emma, you made us so proud," Aunt Marcy beamed, pressing an envelope into my hand. "Your grandmother would have been over the moon." "Thanks," I said, feeling a little warm under the praise. I tucked the envelope into my purse without opening it. Around me, everyone seemed so genuine, so happy. Yet every now and then, I caught glances being exchanged. Quick, nervous flickers between Mom and Dad, a fidget from Logan that set me on edge. Harper found me by the lemonade stand, her red hair glinting under the string lights. She handed me a cup with a little smile. "You doing okay?" she asked, voice low. "Yeah," I said automatically, but the word tasted wrong. Harper leaned in, pretending to adjust my graduation sash. "I don't know. Something about all this feels a little... staged?" I laughed, brushing her off, but my stomach twisted. Maybe it was just nerves. Maybe it was exhaustion from the ceremony. I had no reason to doubt my family, did I? Dinner was called shortly after. We lined up for heaping plates of brisket and buttery corn. The familiar comfort of the food grounded me for a while. I listened to Uncle Rick tell one of his long-winded hunting stories. I smiled through Mom's endless parade of "Emma's such a blessing" speeches. I even laughed when Logan tried to sneak an extra piece of cobbler onto my plate. But as the plates were cleared and the fairy lights blinked on fully against the deepening night, I felt the energy shift. Mom stood up, tapping her spoon against a mason jar. The clinking sound hushed the crowd. Dad rose beside her, beaming in that slightly forced way he used to when my science fair projects didn't win, but he still wanted to act supportive. "Everyone," Mom called, raising her glass. "Thank you for being here tonight to celebrate Emma's incredible achievement." There was a round of polite applause. I ducked my head, cheeks burning, though I wasn't sure if it was pride or something else. "And now," Mom continued, her voice bright and sharp as a bell, "we have a very special surprise for our brilliant girl." From behind her back, Dad produced a sleek leather folder, the kind you might see at a boardroom meeting or a serious legal signing. He handed it to Mom, who turned and presented it to me with both hands, like it was a sacred offering. "Your future, honey," she said, her smile wide enough to stretch. I hesitated. Something about the way she said it made my skin prickle. Her hands trembled just slightly as she held the folder out. Dad's hand landed heavily on my shoulder, squeezing a little too firmly. Logan shifted from foot to foot, looking everywhere but at me. The smells of smoked meat and cut grass that had filled the air all night seemed to fade, replaced by a thick tension that pressed against my temples. I reached for the folder, feeling the slick leather under my fingertips. As I pulled it closer, I caught Mom's eyes, too bright, too eager, and the knot in my stomach tightened until it was a hard, heavy thing. This wasn't just a graduation present. This was something else entirely. No one ever hands you life-changing documents without expecting something back. Grandma Maggie's voice echoed in my mind as I balanced the leather folder in my lap, its polished cover heavier than it should have been. The backyard hummed with the gentle chorus of cicadas as twilight deepened. The fairy lights overhead blinked softly against the darkening sky, their glow casting long shadows over the lawn. The laughter and clinking glasses that had filled the evening had faded into a brittle sort of silence, broken only by the occasional scrape of a chair or the murmur of the night air through the trees. Everyone was watching me. Dad's hand remained on my shoulder, a little too steady now, like he thought I might bolt. Mom's smile strained at the corners, held too long to be real. Logan loitered nearby, arms crossed, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, not meeting my eyes. I slid my fingers under the flap and opened the folder. The first page bore my full name in bold at the top, Emma Louise Collins. Below that, in neat, impersonal print, was the title, Family Financial Management Agreement. I frowned, flipping through the first few pages, my stomach sinking lower with each line I scanned. Trust establishment, asset consolidation, assignment of financial authority. The words blurred together, but the meaning was clear enough. They wanted me to transfer control of my inheritance, Grandma Maggie's legacy, into a new family trust managed by my parents. "This," I started, my voice catching slightly, "this is a trust document." Mom swooped in immediately, voice light as a meringue. "Honey, it's nothing complicated. It's just for safekeeping." Dad nodded along. "Yeah, it's smart. Helps with taxes. Keeps everything clean and simple." I stared at them. The folder felt heavier now, like it was filling with concrete in my hands. "I don't understand," I said slowly. "Why would I need to give up direct control? Grandma left it to me." Mom's smile froze, then reanimated with forced cheer. "Sweetheart, managing that kind of money is a big responsibility. We just thought we can help guide you through it. Keep it protected." "Protected from who?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. "From yourself," Logan said, almost under his breath. I turned to him, startled. His face was red, his eyes darting away. "It's just paperwork, Em," he added quickly, lifting his hands like he could smooth the air between us. "Don't overthink it. We're family." Family. The word tasted bitter. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught Harper standing quietly near the buffet table, her phone loose in her hand. She wasn't recording openly, but I knew her well enough to recognize the tight, cautious look on her face. She felt it too, the wrongness in the air. I flipped to the last page of the document. The fine print was smaller, the language thicker, but the meaning was unmistakable. By signing, I would relinquish all individual rights to the $12 million inheritance. I wouldn't be able to access a cent without Mom and Dad's permission. It would no longer truly be mine. I closed the folder carefully, placing it back in my lap. Denise stepped closer, her hand brushing my hair off my shoulder in a motion so practiced it almost felt natural. Almost. "Emma," she said, voice dripping with maternal concern, "we're only trying to look out for you. You're young. Managing that kind of wealth can be overwhelming. Mistakes happen. And this way, Dad added, smiling like it was already decided, you don't have to worry about a thing. I looked around at the faces surrounding me, faces I had known my whole life, faces that had cheered at my recital, my first job interview, my acceptance into college. And now, those same faces were filled with a quiet, simmering expectation. They weren't asking me. They were telling me. A lump formed in my throat, but I swallowed it down. I could feel Harper's eyes on me, steady and grounding. For a moment, 1,000 arguments rushed to the tip of my tongue. Anger, disbelief, hurt. I wanted to demand how they could do this to me. I wanted to scream that Grandma had trusted me for a reason. But instead, I did something else. I took a slow breath and let it out, my fingers tracing the smooth edge of the folder. I need time to think, I said, my voice calm, almost too calm. A ripple went through the group. Mom's smile faltered, the crack in her mask showing just for a heartbeat. Dad's hand tightened on my shoulder before dropping away. Logan muttered something under his breath that I didn't catch. Harper exhaled quietly behind me, the only sound of pure relief in the yard. Of course, Mom said quickly, smoothing her hair behind her ear. Of course, sweetie, take your time, no pressure. But there was pressure. It pulsed in the humid Texas air, wrapped itself around my ribs, clung to the edges of every word they spoke. I stood up, the leather folder still in my hands. The fairy lights flickered overhead, casting everyone's faces in soft, golden tones that couldn't hide the hard glint in their eyes. As I turned toward the house, I heard Logan say softly, "You're making this harder than it needs to be." I didn't respond. I didn't look back. In my gut, in the place Grandma used to call the whisper of good sense, I knew this wasn't about protecting me. It never had been. As I stepped inside, the screen door slapping shut behind me, I tightened my grip on the folder. Whatever came next, I wasn't going to face it blind. When your gut says run, maybe it's trying to save your life. That thought circled in my mind as I lay on my old twin bed, staring up at the familiar cracks in the ceiling. They hadn't changed in years. Somehow, that made everything else feel even more upside down. The window was cracked open, letting in the warm hum of the Texas night. Somewhere out in the dark, cicadas droned their endless song. The air smelled of cut grass and the faint tang of barbecue smoke lingering from the party. It should have been comforting. It wasn't. The leather folder sat heavy on the quilt beside me, untouched since I brought it inside. I had barely managed a few polite goodnights before slipping upstairs. If Mom or Dad noticed, they didn't say anything. Maybe they thought I needed time to come around. I turned on my side and reached for my laptop. The glow of the screen felt harsh in the dim room, but I needed it. Needed something solid to hold on to before the floor fell out from under me entirely. Scrolling through old emails, I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Proof, maybe. Reassurance. A reminder that I wasn't crazy for feeling what I felt, that heavy, pressing certainty that tonight had been more ambush than celebration. It took longer than I care to admit. Most of Grandma Maggie's emails were sweet, rambling notes about church bake sales or the antics of her neighbor's cat. Simple, loving things that made my throat ache now. And then, buried under months of correspondence, I found it. Subject, "If things ever feel wrong." My hands shook slightly as I clicked it open. "Sweet pea," it began. "I hope you never need this. But if after graduation anything feels funny, contact Mr. Alan Price. He's the family attorney I trust. He'll know what to do. Love you to the moon and back, Grandma." I sat back, heart hammering against my ribs. Grandma must have known. Maybe not every detail, but enough to leave me a lifeline. Alan Price. I didn't recognize the name, but if Grandma trusted him, that was good enough for me. I hesitated for a second, then opened a new email. Subject, urgent. Request for meeting. I kept it short and formal. Told him who I was, mentioned my grandmother's name, and asked if we could meet soon. As soon as I hit send, a part of me wanted to crawl under the covers and pretend the night could still go back to normal. But there was no going back, not after tonight. A soft ping broke the silence. I jumped. A reply. "Dear Ms. Collins, I've been expecting you. Please call my office at your earliest convenience to schedule a meeting. Alan Price." I stared at the screen, a strange mixture of relief and dread flooding my chest. Grandma had set something in motion long before I realized I'd need it. The floor creaked outside my door. I froze, my fingers hovering above the keyboard. For a few long seconds, I heard nothing but the cicadas and the slow thud of my heartbeat. Then a door clicked softly at the end of the hall, and I exhaled. Probably just Logan heading to bed, or maybe Dad making his nightly check on the locks, like he always did when we were little. Still, I closed my laptop carefully and slid it under my pillow, just in case. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was Harper, FaceTiming me. I answered on the second ring, angling the phone so the soft light barely lit my face. "Hey," she whispered, like she understood without being told. "You still at the party?" I asked, keeping my voice low. "Nah, slipped out after you went inside. Didn't feel right sticking around without you." I smiled a little at that. Harper had always been more of a sister than a friend. She could read me better than anyone. "I found something," I said, glancing at the email still glowing faintly under my pillow. Harper leaned closer to the screen. "Good something or bad something?" "Both," I admitted. "Grandma left me a contact, a lawyer, someone she trusted." Harper's face softened. God, she really thought of everything, didn't she? I nodded, feeling a lump rise in my throat. Yeah, she did. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, though. It was the kind that comes when words feel too small for what's sitting between you. "You gonna call him?" Harper asked finally. "I already did," I said. "Meeting's being set up." Harper grinned, tired but proud. "That's my girl." I let out a shaky laugh. "Feels weird, you know? Like, once I step into this, there's no going back." Harper tilted her head. "Maybe that's not such a bad thing." Outside, the cicadas buzzed louder for a moment, then quieted again, like even they were holding their breath. "You're not alone, Em," Harper said softly. "Whatever happens, you've got me." I swallowed hard, blinking fast. "Thanks, Harp. I mean it. Always," she said, and then yawned, covering it quickly. "Okay, get some rest. Big day tomorrow." We ended the call, and I sat there for a long moment, phone resting on my lap. The leather folder still lay on the bed beside me, a physical reminder of everything hanging in the balance. I reached over and touched the smooth cover, then rolled off the bed and knelt beside my dresser. In the bottom drawer, under a faded UT Austin sweatshirt and a box of old birthday cards, I found what I was looking for: Grandma's keychain. It was simple, just a worn leather loop with a tiny silver heart attached, but it had gone everywhere with her. She once told me, "This little thing's seen more road miles than most people do in a lifetime." I held it in my palm, feeling the faint dents and scratches under my thumb. Somehow, it felt like a promise, like a piece of her courage had been left behind for me to find when I needed it most. With trembling fingers, I slipped the keychain into my bag along with the folder. Tomorrow I would find out just how deep this rabbit hole went. And I wasn't going to do it empty-handed. Sometimes the truth doesn't hit you like a lightning bolt. It creeps in, slow and cold, until you can't pretend anymore. It finds the cracks in your armor, the places you thought were safe, and it seeps in until you can't ignore it. The bell above the law office door gave a soft chime as I pushed it open. The place smelled like old books and fresh coffee, a strangely comforting combination. The floors were polished wood, and the walls lined with shelves stuffed full of heavy legal volumes, their spines faded from years of use. Alan Price's office sat on the third floor of a narrow brick building, tucked between a coffee shop and a tailor's shop downtown. It didn't look like much from the outside, but inside, it was solid, dependable, and, most importantly, private. Mr. Price himself stood when I entered, offering a firm handshake and a quiet, "Good morning, Miss Collins." He was older than I expected, maybe in his late 60s, with neatly combed silver hair and the kind of steady gaze that made you feel both seen and protected. "Come in," he said, motioning toward the chair across from his desk. "I believe your grandmother left something important for you." I sat down, my heart pounding against my ribs like a warning drum. Without another word, he opened a drawer and pulled out a small sealed envelope and a black USB drive. He placed them both gently in front of me, like he was offering something fragile and sacred. "This," he said, tapping the USB with one finger, "is a personal video message your grandmother recorded about 6 months before her passing. She insisted it be given to you under specific circumstances." "And the letter?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. "Instructions," he said simply, written in her own hand. For a moment, I just stared at the items on the desk. They felt like a bridge between worlds, the girl who used to spend summers baking cookies in Grandma's kitchen, and the woman now sitting here trying to untangle betrayal dressed up as love. "Would you like to view the video now?" Mr. Price asked, his voice kind. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. He rose and plugged the USB into a laptop sitting on a side table. After a few clicks, the screen lit up, and there she was. Grandma Maggie. Her silver hair was swept neatly back, and she wore her favorite pale blue sweater, the one she always said made her eyes look bright. She smiled, but there was a gravity to it that made my throat tighten. "Hello, my darling Emma." Her voice filled the small room, warm and clear. "If you're seeing this, it means things have unfolded much as I feared they might." I leaned forward, every muscle in my body tense. "I love our family," she said, her eyes softening. "But love doesn't make people perfect. It doesn't erase their flaws or their fears. I saw the signs, the quiet ways greed can seep into even good hearts." She paused, her gaze steady, as if she could see right through the screen into my soul. "I left everything to you because I trust you," she said, "not just to protect the money, but to protect yourself, and I built in a safeguard." The screen shifted to a document she held up, the trust agreement, marked and highlighted. "If anyone tries to coerce you," Grandma continued, "if anyone pressures you to give up your rights, the entire estate, every penny, will be automatically redirected to 4 charities I personally selected." The camera zoomed in slightly, catching the fierce set of her jaw. "You hold the key, Emma, not them. You." The screen went black. I sat there for a long moment staring at the empty screen, my hands curled into fists in my lap. Mr. Price waited until I looked up. "You are the sole trustee," he said. "You do not need to sign anything. You do not need to agree to anything. Unless you choose to, the inheritance remains fully yours." I let out a slow breath, some of the tension easing from my shoulders. I wasn't trapped. Not yet. "If they push too hard," Mr. Price added, his tone even, "they risk losing everything." I thought of Mom's too bright smile, Dad's heavy hand on my shoulder, Logan's muttered warnings. They thought they were cornering me, controlling me. They didn't realize I was holding the bigger key. "Thank you," I said, my voice stronger now. Mr. Price nodded. "Your grandmother was a remarkable woman. She loved you very much." "I know," I whispered. He slid the USB and the envelope back toward me. "Take these. Study them if you wish. But know this, you have every right to stand your ground." I reached out and gathered the items carefully, tucking them into my bag like precious stones. For the first time in days, I felt something solid under my feet, a path forward, not easy, not without pain, but clear. I rose from the chair, smoothing my skirt with shaking hands. "Is there anything else I should know?" I asked. Mr. Price gave a small smile. "Only what you already do. Trust yourself." As I stepped out into the sunlight, the air smelled sharper, cleaner, as if the city itself had been holding its breath and finally exhaled. I paused on the sidewalk, glancing up at the clear blue sky stretching overhead. The folder pressed reassuringly against my side. Inside my bag, the USB drive felt small but mighty, like a sword hidden in plain sight. I wasn't just fighting for an inheritance anymore. I was fighting for the right to believe in myself. I tightened my grip on the bag and started walking, my footsteps steady against the old brick sidewalk. Whatever came next, I wasn't afraid. I left the office clutching the USB drive like it was a sword, and for the first time in a long, long while, I knew exactly whose side I was on. Peace isn't handed to you. You have to choose it every day, even when it costs you family dinners and Sunday calls you used to answer without thinking. 3 months had passed since that night in the backyard. Summer had begun its slow fade into early fall, the heat lifting just enough to let a few brave breezes wander in from the water. Austin didn't do seasons the way other places did, but if you knew how to look, you could feel the shift. The light changed, softer somehow, and the cicadas sang a little less desperately. I leaned against the balcony rail of my new apartment overlooking Lady Bird Lake, a mug of coffee cooling in my hands. The water below glimmered like a sheet of glass, the sunset painting it in shades of gold and deep orange. It wasn't a fancy place, just 2 bedrooms, hardwood floors that creaked when you walked too fast, and a little kitchen with mismatched tile. But it was mine. Every piece of furniture, every potted plant, every cheerful throw pillow was something I had chosen because I loved it, not because it matched a theme or impressed a guest. Inside, the space smelled faintly of lavender and lemon from the candle Harper had given me as a housewarming gift. A vase of fresh sunflowers, another gift from myself, stood proudly on the kitchen table, their faces turned toward the fading light. When I first moved in, the emptiness had scared me. All that space and quiet after years of squeezing myself into the narrow expectations of family first. But now, the silence felt like possibility, like breathing room. I sipped my coffee and smiled to myself. Maggie's Trust had opened its doors last week, a small nonprofit offering free financial literacy classes for young adults just starting out. Exactly the kind of thing I wished I had known at 18. The first seminar was held in the community center downtown. We had 12 students, a stack of homemade brochures, and a borrowed projector that flickered every 15 minutes. But it was a start. Grandma would have been proud. I like to think she was. That morning, I had run into Mom, Denise, at the local grocery store. We both reached for the same jar of peach preserves, our hands bumping awkwardly. For a moment, neither of us spoke. She looked older somehow, not in the way time wears you down, but in the way regret does, hollowing you out from the inside. Her hair was pulled back too tightly, her makeup careful and brittle. "Emma," she said finally, voice tight. "Hi, Mom," I said, keeping my tone even. We stood there, 2 women with a lifetime between us, clutching identical jars of jam. "I heard about the nonprofit," she said after a beat. "It's good, what you're doing." "Thanks," I said, and I meant it. Maybe for the first time in a long while. She opened her mouth like she might say something more, then thought better of it. She nodded once, tucked the jar into her cart, and walked away. No apologies, no justifications, just distance. And strangely, it didn't hurt. It just was. Later that evening, Harper showed up at my door carrying 2 brown bags from our favorite taco truck and a 6-pack of root beer. "Celebration dinner," she announced, barging in like she owned the place. "First month's rent paid on your own terms. You're officially a grown-up." I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. We ate cross-legged on the living room floor, trading bites and stories about her chaotic work week. The room buzzed with quiet happiness, the kind that sneaks up on you when you aren't trying so hard to earn it. After Harper left, I cleaned up the plates and wandered back onto the balcony. The sky had deepened into a velvet blue, the stars just beginning to prick through the dark. I wrapped my sweater tighter around myself and leaned against the rail, letting the cool air kiss my cheeks. I thought about everything that had happened, about Grandma, about Mom and Dad, about Logan, about the way love could get tangled up with fear and expectation, how easily it could become a leash instead of a lifeline, but not here, not anymore. Grandma's last words echoed in my mind, soft and sure. Walk toward peace, not guilt. I closed my eyes, feeling the truth of it settle in my chest. Choosing peace hadn't been easy. It meant saying no to people I still loved. It meant letting go of dreams I used to have about what family was supposed to look like. It meant standing alone, sometimes, when every instinct begged me to run back into old patterns. But it was worth it, because for the first time, the life I was building was mine. As I watched the sunset melt into the water, the city lights flickering on one by one along the lake, I whispered into the quiet, "Thank you, Grandma. I'm finally home." And for once, I believed it. Standing there on my small balcony, watching the sunset wash the lake in gold, I realized peace was never something others could give me. It was something I had to claim for myself. In the end, family isn't just about shared names or Sunday dinners. It's about respect, honesty, and letting love grow without strings attached. If we choose to walk toward peace instead of guilt, we build lives rooted in real connection, not fear. If this story touched a corner of your heart, I'd love for you to share your thoughts or memories about a time you chose yourself and found something better waiting.